Do we, I guess, do we still
Yeah.
want to give people time for food? Because, no, keep it rolling? Okay.
Okay. Our second presenter is Semm, and the title of his project is How Bushido Affects Modern View on Suicidio in Japan. I am going to translate this in Spanish, and Professor Yoshiko is going to translate in Japanese, because I don't know. Okay? ¿Cómo el Bushido afecta la visión que se tiene del suicidio actualmente en Japón?
Well, I guess it's Japanese is there, but he's going to talk about actually Bushido is a samurai. It's probably you know most, he's familiar. But I just want to mention a little bit about the Jake. He received the Silver Award last evening, and I really want to congratulate his effort. He studied Japan for 1 year, and given the fact that he didn't have any Japanese when he came to CSUB, it's quite an accomplishment. And he's going to actually explain in English so that his parents can understand what he's talking about. But he did actually indeed present everything in Japanese and pass the test. So congratulations.
ありがとうございました。Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to my wonderful presentation. I would also like to welcome the wonderful Monterey weather for also being here, for creating the mood. So, Bushido has many interesting aspects to it, and the one that I thought that would be most interesting, at least to me, and also caused me to pull out the most amount of my hair would be suicide. So, let's get started. What first caused me to get interested in suicide? It was while I was studying in Japan. My intercultural communications instructor mentioned that of all of the exchange students in the world, the demographic most likely to commit suicide would be the Japanese male. And that kind of got me thinking, why is this? And so when I came back from Japan, I discussed with Dr. Saito Abbott my topic idea, and she said, that sounds great, so let's do it. And so I started my research, and the first website that I visited for this research said that in 2003, Japan had a record number of suicides of 34,427 suicides. And it also mentioned that this is roughly the same number as the United States had in the same year. And as those who have studied Japan know, Japan's population is around 126 million people, and the United States is somewhere in the 275 million range. So Japan's population is half or less, thus making its suicide rate double or more. In 1997 was actually considered the last somewhat normal year of amounts of suicide in Japan at roughly 25,000, and it has been over 30,000 suicides annually since 1998. So I also looked at how suicide is actually studied, and I found out that the patterns of suicide are broken up by country, and that Japan's pattern is considered to be bimodal. There's a peak in the 19 to 24 range and another peak in the 45 to 55 range, but that I think this is an older study because Japanese trends within genders are actually changing. The Japanese male actually now follows more of the Hungarian trend, in that as they get older, their chance for suicide increases. I also found that the Japanese male is 3 times as likely to commit suicide as a Japanese female, and that Japan as a whole, this is a really fun statistic, you are actually 5 times more likely to kill yourself than you are to die in a traffic accident. So, Don't worry, Mom. This is this is a wax statue. It's they didn't actually get someone to do this. It's really it boils down to Japan has essentially two views of suicide. There's the very, I guess, I hesitate to say stereotypical, but there's the the generic thought of the society as a whole that Japanese is actually can be a very beautiful thing when there's meaning behind it, when there's a purpose to it. And it's actually used as most commonly as a responsibility or as an apology of sorts to society for one's actions or one's failures. And this is the part where it ties into Bushido, and I'll get into that later. But then there's also the Japanese medicine or medicinal view is that it also follows, that view follows more Western thoughts in that wanting to kill yourself is a mental illness and you should be treated for it immediately. So we came up with 3 research questions in Japanese first, so I'm going to have to remember the translations form into English. So this is, what are the reasons for modern, or for suicide in modern Japan? What are the effects of Bushido on, what is the effects of Bushido on modern suicide? And what are the Japanese views of death in general, particularly with views of beauty, responsibility, and apology? And so, in order to do this in hopefully a timely fashion, I created this outline where first we will discuss, or I will tell you what I've learned a little about Bushido and the thoughts of the Edo period, which is samurai times, and then also these effects on both the young and the middle-aged elderly, the two demographics at highest risk of suicide. And then I will also go into how suicide is presented and prevented in Japan, and then if we have time, we'll have some questions. So Bushido, as the book title says, translates into English as the way of the warrior, and it's really made up of borrowed ideas from 4 other philosophies and religions: Confucianism, Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, and Shinto. So Confucianism is a philosophy from ancient China, which was based off of the teachings of Confucius, and Bushido borrows the social structure and moral codes of this philosophy, and with specifics to the filial piety aspect of it, in that you respect your elders and you respect those in higher social status than you, and definitely if you were a samurai, you would have to unquestioningly follow the demands or wishes of your lord, your daimyo, even if he were to ask for your death. With Buddhism, this is a religion based off of the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, and what Bushido borrows from this is reincarnation, the belief that when you die, you will come back to life, assuming you haven't reached enlightenment. You will come back to life again and, I guess, get another try. And Bushido uses this to essentially destroy any fear a samurai may have of death, in that as long as they do their best, they try and do the right or good thing, that they will come back and get to keep serving, if you will. Zen is a type of Buddhism, in that it's more focused, if you will, on meditation, self-reflection, and the more aesthetic practices of life. And these actually come into Bushido in the forms of many cultural aspects of Japan, in the tea ceremony and flower arrangement, ikebana, and calligraphy. And so these practices were used to give the samurai something other to do than kill people. And so this brings us around to Shinto, which is the native Japanese religion. It didn't have any formalized structure to it. It was until 500 AD, or BCE, as I've written before. No, it should be 800. Sorry. Anyway, so around the 7th or 8th century, it finally became formalized and had a standardized set of practices and worships throughout Japan. And what this is essentially the glue that makes it palatable to the Japanese appetite. Since they included this belief into it, the Japanese people didn't see anything as really changing. They were still the same people. Japan was still born from the goddess Amaterasu, and most importantly, the emperor was still a god in Japan, and thus the ultimate root of all of the samurai's power. Everything stems from him. So he's the focal point, if you will. And so, this one is interesting. So really, all of these 4 aspects of Bushido, none of them made any sort of moral judgment on suicide. And so as such, Japanese people don't really have any sort of taboo stemming from the past on whether it's a bad thing to kill yourself. And so as such, it has become the, I guess, preferred method of, not apology, but it's the preferred method of showing the sincerity of your apology. Because between samurai, they had all the wealth of Japan, and so having more money was not exactly worthless, but a life was seen as worth more than money. And so first we're going to look at this, we're going to skip that one, that's research questions. So, right, now we're going to look at the modern Japanese youth and their reasons for suicide. And these are just the most commonly listed reasons. The tremendous academic pressure, which stems from many aspects. The entrance exams into university levels are very stressful times for students, because if they fail the entrance exams, then they have to wait a year to try again, or maybe just try and get accepted into a lesser college, one that may not necessarily net them as good of a job for later in life. And so also in preparation for this, Japanese youth will go to cram school, which is actually school after school, and will sometimes stay there as late as 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And then Sorry, I didn't translate all these from Japanese into English, so I gotta think about this last one. Since they spend so much time in school, they don't always get a chance to be kids, and so they don't necessarily get the level of human interaction necessary to build really good social skills. And then that also compiles with, since they also don't get to be kids with other kids, they also don't get to be with their families. And so they don't necessarily get a good family life. They don't get the stability and moral values that would help them to become a better person, which can also sometimes lead into bullying at school, which then thus increases, pressure for other students as well, in that, they've got tests to worry about, they've got bullying going on, they've got no friends, no family, and it unfortunately causes many to crack. And this is a common outlet for it. It's called, I guess, a trend called hikikomori, which I've translated into English as meaning the withdrawn. And what it is you essentially don't participate in society at all. You don't leave, these people, they do not leave the house, they don't interact with their family even though they live with them. They will oftentimes set up alternate schedules so they don't even have to see their family. The only real human communication they get is through the internet and email chat on their phones with other people who have stepped out of society, and just it's a very awkward stage or aspect of life, and seeing as they don't participate in society at all aside from sponging off of their parents, it kind of, to me, I kind of see it as if they're a form of living suicide, in that, they once had or once participated in life, and now they no longer do. And I think the most staggering, I guess, aspect of this, if you will, is that there are currently 1.2 million, or 1% of Japan's population, that are classified as hikikomori. There's also a rising trend in Japanese youth called jisatsu sakuru, or suicide clubs. And what these are internet chat rooms or forums where people will talk with each other they will be lonely and want to kill themselves first, and then they will seek out other people who share this common interest, if you will, and they will use the anonymity of the internet to open up themselves to strangers who also want to kill themselves, and they will talk about it, and in some cases make plans and actually do kill themselves in a group suicide. However, this is the vast majority of people who visit these sites do not end up killing themselves and actually find it very therapeutic, kind of like going to see a therapist, only in this case it's an unlicensed therapist. You're just talking with someone about a common interest, although hopefully not a hobby. I'm sorry, it's having studied suicide for a year, I've kind of developed some strange habits. Sorry. So now the middle-aged and elderly, their main reasons for suicide, as I've said, are apology and responsibility for actions. So let's see what I got here. Many times someone's actions, like, I'm sorry, I should have prepared this earlier. What do I want to say? The modern salaryman can earn, middle-aged will often take their lives because of an action that they've done to bring shame upon themselves or their families. They feel they have wronged society in a way. And so, like I said, this directly ties in with Bushido in that it's the expression of their sincerity to society about being wrong, and also did I skip something? Well, this shame can cause the this shame or frustration can cause the person to actually see living as being painful, and then also this can, I guess, balloon into the person's family also seeing it as their responsibility as well to commit suicide, with the person to add, I guess, to the sincerity of their apology. And in some very, very extreme cases, they will also end up killing their children as well. And it's seen as, most commonly, as cruel to the child to let them live without their parents, and also cruel to society to have them actually raise the child. So these two views of suicide are such that the Western view is that suicide is a crime, and that the Japanese societal view is that it's showing responsibility and also an apology to the world, but also a hope for their next life. Getting into media real quick, in 2002, a movie called Suicide Club was actually released in Japan, and I found that it was interesting because in 2003, Japan had record number of suicides, but that the group suicide rates, as was sensationally portrayed in this movie, did not increase significantly until 2005, in which case they had, in 2005, in May, they surpassed the total numbers of 2004 for suicide. And what this movie's actual impact on society is, I'm not sure yet. And no, I don't know if anyone is, because it's still maybe a little too new. As far as prevention goes, the Japanese Mental Health Agency has released a web page called Ikiru, which is the Japanese verb to live. And it's a website aimed at not persuading people out of suicide, but trying to get people to re-find joy in life. They've also cut down the number of school days for kids to just 5 days a week. Yeah, they used to do a half day on Saturdays in the mornings, but that was tossed out. And then also companies are being pressured to increase the number of sick days and vacation days for their employees, as well as the Japanese government has increased the number of national holidays. And that's something. So in closing, Japan has held on to this view of Bushido for roughly 1,000 years. And in the 200 years since they have become a modernized society, the face of the country has changed, but the heart of the country is still very much Bushido. And that my intercultural communications instructor would have called deep culture, the stuff that you don't get to see unless you've actually lived and breathed with the people there, is still very much the same. Thank you very much. Do we have time at all for questions, or are there questions?
Yes. Bruce? Oh,
Doesn't matter.
one question.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a connection between the Bushido with the young people in the schools or suicide? That
Yes. What I would say is that they are really the first manifestation of, in that, how, I actually forgot to mention this part, now that I think about it. The definition of success in Japanese society is you get into a good school, you get a good job, you get married and have a family and provide for them in a way that they can then enter a good university and get a good job and have a family. And so if this can create tremendous pressure on someone, because if that's the definition of success, what happens when you fail to succeed? And so it's really very awkward stage for youth when you look at it in the very traditional aspects. Donaldo?
Jack, does Japan have a system of education that allows, for those who can't go to the best universities, they can go to community colleges type of thing?
Yes, they do have community colleges, and they do have community or two-year colleges, and up until recently, they were kind of considered to be women's colleges. Sorry, Mom. But it was in traditional Japanese society, the man is the breadwinner and the woman is the housewife, and so as such, there really is no need for a four-year degree or further master's or bachelor's degree if you're going to be staying at home taking care of the kids, and it's kind of unnecessary. So as it is now, the women's liberation movement is actually starting into swing now in Japanese society, and women are staying in the workforce longer. They are having more. They're getting more educated through four-year degrees and higher. They're having children later and later, and also not dropping out of work once they do have children. And so this is creating a whole new, interesting set of situations for Japan to be in, which I'm hoping someone will be able to make a capstone out of later. Bruce?
You mentioned that you showed the book, The Way of the Warrior,
Mm-hmm.
and as I understand it, The Way of the Warrior was strictly a samurai kind of situation where you do the seppuku, I think they call it,
Seppuku.
cut open your belly, and for the reason that you mentioned. But how does this, what is it, it seems to me there's a disconnect between this kind of suicide and the kind of suicide of a young kid who failed his entrance exams or who's the pressure's so great that he commits suicide.
Right.
Well, there seems to be,
It's
it
a
doesn't
little
fit into the seppuku, into the Bushido paradigm at all.
It is a bit of a stretch, but I see it as really almost in a way pre-Bushido, because like when you're in the workforce, the connections can be drawn very easily to Bushido, but when you're young, you can't really, you don't have the experience, if you will, to like you're too new. It's really kind of, it's not so much the act, it's the what do I want to say? It's the I don't know. It's not, no. It's not premature Bushido.
Well, it seems to me that
Mhm.
the young people,
Right.
let's leave the salaryman out of it.
Right.
But the young people who are committing suicide, they don't commit suicide for the same reasons the samurai committed suicide. There's a whole other
Right.
agenda that they have, which causes them
Well,
to commit suicide or not commit
the
suicide.
the life of a modern youth is now very different from the life of a samurai youth, in that youths today, they're not necessarily taught the same social interactions as they once were. And so it's kind of, I almost want to say instinctual. And so when suicide is presented to them as a very, in some ways sensationalized, in some ways, man, what do I want to say on this?
Jackie, you mentioned something like the reincarnation, beliefs in
Right.
reincarnation.
So
That's what
it's,
we want to-
when they still have this belief of reincarnation, they see that their lives are, even though they are, they see this life in many ways as over. And so what they want to do is then move on and try again in the next life to see if they can do better.
Thank you very
you.
much.
Sorry I went over.